Anyone who played the original Final Fantasy VII will almost certainly remember having a visceral reaction to this image. The game suddenly switches from 3D graphics and pre-rendered backgrounds to a disturbing, hand-drawn and even fully animated art style of a human-monster hybrid. So what is this thing? Why was its art style never used again throughout the entirety of the game, and what impact does this creature have on the overall compilation of Final Fantasy VII and its ongoing remake series? Stick around as we do a deep dive and a little bit of speculation on what has become known as the Maconoid. By this point in the game, the player has now become completely comfortable with Final Fantasy VII's established visual language. Steampunk electric power plants, disrepaired urban areas, and large, untouched, sprawling green environments. We think we've seen it all, and then it happens. While exploring what could easily be seen as just another Mako reactor, the game completely flips its visual style on its head for one moment of undeniable impact. Confronted not only with a terrifying human-monster hybrid, but also with an art style that is completely alien to the established world, and this is precisely what makes the scene so memorable. We, the player, peer through the screen and are struck with the single most unique image in the game. By breaking the established aesthetic, this flashing image becomes even more horrifying. If the entire game were drawn in this style, we would simply accept the creature, but because it arrives abruptly in a style that we've never seen before, it becomes eerie, unforgettable, and totally unique. The developers could have thrown us into a fight like any other to introduce this creature to the game, or stick to the usual cutscene exposition to show a set-piece moment like this in a language that we already spoke. But by showing us something completely new and alien, the game elevates the moment in a far more effective manner. Simply by switching up the art style, the game forces us to think about its world in a way that we hadn't considered before, and by never returning to this art style again, it refuses to dilute the moment, adding to its weight and uncanny nature. The scene is often interpreted as a jump scare, and there is some merit to that, but I would argue that it's more effectively thought about as a pivotal turning point in the narrative of the game. It's this exact scene that sets off a series of events that kicks off the main narrative. It's almost a Chekhov's monster. A single disturbing image that signals everything is about to change. Just as the narrative changes in this moment, we the player realise there is so much more to this fantasy RPG than previously had met the eye. We are now dealing with an added threat, a body horror element that will ripple through the rest of the game. Gone are any expectations of fighting the usual fantasy fare, dragons, griffins, slimes and the like. We're dealing with man-made evil, the result of cruel experimentation, corporate greed, and militaristic aspirations. So just what exactly is this thing? As we know, members of Shinra's soldier unit are exposed to high levels of Mako energy, granting them superhuman-like abilities. In normal circumstances, this was done within reasonable safety limits to avoid mutations or Mako poisoning. However, as we soon discover, something else is going on here. Immediately after the reveal of the creature, we don't have to wait long to get an in-game explanation. Sephiroth begins to explain that these unfortunate creatures are the result of Professor Hojo of Shinra's cruel experiments. Elsewhere in the compilation, it's explained that these pods are used to compress raw Mako energy into materia orbs seen in the game. Hojo, however, as part of his dark scientific experiments, has been using them to expose humans to massive amounts of Mako energy, far exceeding that of a normal soldier. Evidently, while this happens, the subjects lose their humanity, becoming monstrous and creating the Makonoid. Mutated living organisms produced by Mako energy being fused with a human host. The Maconoid's upper body, now darkened by the influence of Mako energy, has hardened like stone. Horns protrude from the creature's head, yet you can still make out its humane facial features, including its unmistakably human teeth. Many cultures have mythological creatures that is half man, half beast, reminiscent of a satyr from Greek mythology or a faun from Roman mythology, usually coming along with fantastical stories of mischief making or music playing, but Final Fantasy VII puts a darker twist on this trope. underlying the overall narrative of mechanical design and cold technology replacing what was once natural or human. No sooner has the creature been explained than we see one of the pods fail and a creature falls out to what appears to be an agonizing death. Unable even to support its own weight, it falls to the ground and is never seen from or heard of again during the original game, while it goes on to deal with the much larger narrative. As the game refuses to elaborate further, we the player are left in the dark about these twisted creatures for the remainder of the journey. In the original 1997 release, the creature is never actually named, never fought in combat, and never seen again outside of the two disturbing depictions in the Nibble reactor. However, we do see multiple incarnations of the same or similar creature throughout the rest of the prequels and remakes that make up the compilation of Final Fantasy VII. The scene in the Nibble reactor is such a pivotal moment in the game that we can view it through multiple different sources. The PSP prequel game Crisis Core, showing the events from protagonist Zack Fair's point of view. We see the events play out largely the same way as in the original game. We can also encounter the creature in combat later in Crisis Core, and this is where we finally see that it was officially named the Maconoid. Using the exact same design as the original game, Crisis Core stays faithful. However, where before it was a shambling creature unable to support its own weight, we now have a formidable monster with an incredible pool of health and fast, hard-hitting combat abilities. Again, in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, we see the same scene play out with much more dramatic visuals and acting performances that befit modern consoles. With the scene itself staying more or less faithful to the original, Rebirth, however, adds a new enemy class later in the game which we can speculate is based off of the Maconoid. The player encounters groups of the unknown entity multiple times throughout Chapter 13 and 17. The enemy intel data in the game describes them much the same as the Maconoid would be described. Experimental specimens elaborating that they were once human. Though not explicitly named as the Maconoid, they are certainly of the same idea. In the game's extracted data, the internal field name for this moment is NVMKIN23. This code identifies it as the Nibelheim reactor interior screen. Numbers in the 20s in the code of the game are used for cut-in images and scripted events, which means that this monster illustration was imported as a special still image, not one of the pre-rendered backgrounds that can be explored, and not one of the CGI movies that can be watched during the cutscenes. This explains why the art style doesn't match literally any other screen in the game, and most likely this is a scene that was added late in development, as it seems to be more or less a concept art image that has had some animation applied to it. It was almost certainly drawn by a member of Square's event or storyboard team, not the background department, but I was unable to find any specific artist credited with the initial concept art. It appears exactly once, is never reused, and doesn't exist in any official art books that I can find, making it one of the most mysterious assets in all of Final Fantasy VII. To speculate a little bit on this, it's entirely possible that I'm giving Squaresoft too much credit for creating a deliberately underutilized and completely unique asset. Perhaps it is exactly because this image may have been thrown together quickly to fit a missing CGI cutscene, or simply a late development cycle idea that needed to be added in with concept art that was lying around, that we ended up with this otherworldly and unforgettable moment, created by breaking the established visual language of Final Fantasy VII. Thank you for sticking around and making it to the end of this video if you did. If you have any speculation on these creatures or a vivid memory of the first time you encountered this scene, I would love to hear about it in the comments. I'll certainly reply. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this and others besides. See you in the next one.